Hello and welcome back to another daily dose of the Word. We are back in the book of Proverbs again today, looking at Proverbs 2. And I have three ways that we can divide this proverb up and begin to apply it into our life. So let's dive right into it. Starting in verse 1. My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding, yes, if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright, he is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity, every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will watch over you, understanding will guard you, delivering you from the way of evil. From men of perverted speech who forsake the paths of uprightness, to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perverseness of evil. Men whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. So you will be delivered from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words, who forsakes the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house sinks down to death, and her path to the departed. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. So you will walk in the way of good, and keep the paths of righteous. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it. All right, so I think we can think of this passage in three different sections. The first one being verses 1 through 5, which talks about seeking wisdom. The second one being verse 6, which talks about receiving wisdom. And the third section being verse 7 through 22, which talks about walking in wisdom. So verses 1 through 5, seeking wisdom. I got a question for you right off the bat. What things in life do you value the most? What things in life do you value the most? Is it friends? Is it relationships? Is it video games? Is it social media? Is it popularity? Is it school? Whatever it may be, think through what things in life you ultimately value the most. Now, I ask you what things in life you value the most because I'm assuming that likely one of the things you did not say was wisdom. I'm assuming in terms of things that you place the most value on, wisdom was not one of your first guesses or one of the first things that came to mind. But as we see here in Proverbs 2, Solomon places a very high emphasis on wisdom. He places a very high value on wisdom. Follow along with me again in verses 1 through 6. See all these if-then statements, right? It says, if you receive my words and treasure my commandments with you, and if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, and if you seek for it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. And so we love to use if-then statements in our own vocabulary today. You say, if you do this, then this will happen, right? There's a condition along with it. If I do my chores on time, then my parents will give me more freedoms. If I do a good job on my homework, then I will receive a good grade. If I practice my sport a lot, then I will get better, right? So there's this whole idea of if I do this, then this will happen. And essentially Solomon's saying the same thing here. He's saying, if wisdom is what we want, right? If wisdom is something that's to be prized and possessed, then in order to receive it, we must do these other things first. So now circle back to the question that we asked at the beginning, which was, what things do you most value in life? And like I said, probably not a lot of you mentioned wisdom as one of your things. I would encourage you in this and say that wisdom ultimately affects, right? It almost like reigns over and affects everything else that we place below it. So all the decisions that we choose to make throughout the day, all the things that we choose to prioritize our time with, that we choose to indulge in and enjoy, those all relate back to wisdom in terms of how they impact us, affect us going forward. And so if here are all the little things that we enjoy doing on a daily basis, right? They're at the bottom level and we say wisdom is above them and kind of shines light down upon them. Well then, where does wisdom ultimately come from? Right? Where does wisdom ultimately come from? And that's what we learn here in verse 6. In verse 6 it says, for the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and instruction. So here's all the things that we enjoy. Wisdom should kind of penetrate and shine down on them. And we know that above wisdom, right, is actually God. So God reigns supreme over wisdom. He's the one who dishes out wisdom. He gives wisdom. He offers instruction to shine light on the things that we do every single day. Now, if you're like me, you love free stuff, right? We all love free stuff. Most human beings just love free stuff. I think what's really awesome about our understanding of wisdom from Proverbs 2 here is that we learn that wisdom from God is a free resource available to all of us. Right? In verse 6, it says, "For the Lord gives wisdom." Right? There's no conditions to it. There's nothing I have to pay in order to receive it. It says He gives wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding. And so my question to you is this. Where are you gaining your wisdom from? Right? Where are you getting your wisdom from? Are you gaining your wisdom from God's word, as it says here in verse 6, or are you gaining it from the things of the world? I can promise you that if your wisdom and your insight and your understanding of how to do things is coming from the world, then it is flawed and is going to lead to folly, right? You might not see it in the short term, but I promise you, you'll see it in the long term. Right? The only true source of wisdom that we have is God's word. And so based on that, I would ask you, how much time are you spending in God's word? Start there. Begin to think. Am I actually going to the Bible as my source of truth, or am I going to other things in my life expecting those to fill the needs that I have? Right, again, there's plenty of short-term fixes that will offer short-term remedies. But in terms of long-term, lasting success, life, and joy, the only source is going to be this book. I can promise you that. I can promise you that. And so are you turning to the things of the world, or are you turning to God's word in terms of seeking wisdom? Ask yourself that question. This brings us to the last section of Proverbs 2, which is verses 7 through 22, which is walking in wisdom. Listen to these words that describe what it means or how it sounds to walk in wisdom, right? These are words that as it refers to walking in wisdom. Shield, integrity, guarding, watching over, righteousness, justice, every good path, pleasant. Now compare that to the words that it uses to describe walking outside of wisdom. It says evil, perverted, forsaken, darkness, crooked, devious, forbidden, forgotten, death, departed. And so my last question to you is this. Which lists of words best describes how you're presently feeling right now? Right? Which list of words best describes how you're presently feeling right now? And now I'd argue that both answers ultimately point back to the same source, right? Both answers point back to the same source. If we're feeling rejected, deflated, and down, then go back to part 1, right? Go back to verses 1 through 5 where it talks about seeking wisdom and saying, what things am I prioritizing in life and how can I most seek God? And then if we feel like things are going really well in life and we feel like we're on a good path, I'd say, make sure that that source of that is God, because if it's other things, when those things let you down, you're going to end up falling into category 2. And so again, we need to go back to verses 1 through 5 and say, what sort of things am I prioritizing? What sort of things am I seeking? And then highlight verse 6 where it says, wisdom is found in God and His Word. Wisdom is found in God and His Word. I know that this is a tough time. I know that this is a tough season. And I know that there are days when we feel like we're doing really good, and then there's days that we feel like we're doing really bad. I promise you that the only true source of joy, peace, and rest we'll get is from God's Word, is from abiding in Him, not abiding in the things of the world, not allowing our thoughts to overcome us and overwhelm us, not falling victim to thinking about the past or the future, but resting in God in the present. So use Proverbs 2 today as a help for you, an encouragement to you, a means of seeking out wisdom and resting in God. And I'd say rest and reflect on the truths that we've talked about today and begin to think through, how can I apply these to my life? How can I begin to seek more wisdom and seek to grow my relationship with the Lord? All right, I hope you guys are having a great day. As always, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out, email, phone, whatever it may be, and I'll talk to you all soon.